And we're live. Welcome back, everyone, to the HVAC 2.0 show. Got a light one tonight. We'll see if anybody else pops in throughout. But
Rita can't make it. Tim's not going to
okay,
be here.
okay. Well, I guess it'll be a
I know
light show.
Tommy
So
will show up. And Ken, I haven't heard from Ken.
okay, well,
He's probably traveling.
Yeah, probably so.
Retired guys do that.
Yeah, that retired life. Don't blame them. Well, I guess let's get into some of the new stuff that we have coming in on or coming up for the free quote report with likely load range.
So Eric's pretty excited because he's using Claude GPT, I guess, to help him find bugs in the software.
Yeah, Claude.
And it's working really well. And then he's also making great headway on fixing sort of the order and usability of the report of the interview process, because this will be part of the interview. And this will be a pop-up window after you enter your information. You won't have to run the report, look at the report, decide you want to modify the report, go back to the entry page. You'll be able to just do this from the entry page. Plus, as you see here, he put little hash marks at every half ton, so that it's much easier to distinguish what size equipment falls in the green, which size equipment falls in the yellow, what size equipment falls in the red. And then that little arrow shows your current equipment size. So the only further improvement to this that we're working on, which we'll be talking about a little bit tonight, is ductwork constraint. So there's also going to be a line within likely load range that will effectively allow you to effectively communicate to the prospect the size limitation of the equipment based on their current ductwork.
Yeah.
So if it says that the ductwork is good for 32,000 BTU, they probably don't want to go with 36, particularly if it's single stage, and probably not if it's two stage. You could go with 36 with a 5-stage or modulating a piece of equipment. I'm going to have to get 5-stage out of my nomenclature now, aren't I?
I guess so. It's going to be a tough one for me to kick too, because it's always been 5-stage variable speed. Now it's
No,
like
it's variable speed,
yeah, yeah. As if
variable
it's
speed
not
one,
computed.
variable speed inexpensive, variable speed expensive.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Some of them it's just really, really expensive and just really expensive.
Yeah. Do you want really, really expensive? Do you want the most expensive or just expensive?
Yeah.
But I think if you have 34,000 BTU duct with a 3-ton green speed, it's probably not ever. It's going to run in 3 tons so seldom that it's not going to put your blower motor at risk.
Yeah. Then it's just kind of more of a using
Noise,
the equipment.
efficiency.
Don't be setting your equipment back a lot to where you're making it ramp up to catch up. That sort of thing.
Right. But it'll be nice because this will help further encourage the homeowner to lean towards the green.
Yes.
Not that you wouldn't willingly sell them bigger ductwork, but it also might encourage them to think about doing an actual load range in some cases, instead of a likely load range. And then I think we're going to go and talk about static pressure and arriving at projected static pressure. And one of the questions that I had for you, Tanner, from what you wrote earlier, and let me see if I can find that conversation. I don't know how to. Was should there be an estimated version and a measured version? And also, should there also be PSC to EM's EC motor conversion version? And how would we do that? We talked a little bit about, there probably shouldn't be that 30% factor if it's below half an inch of static, because that 30% factor only starts to come into play when the ECM sees restriction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think, should I remove this now?
Sure. Here,
Okay.
I might share my screen because then I'll have that spreadsheet up so we can just kind of like we
That'd
might can
be
play
good.
around with it and see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because there's a few things with this that I've been thinking about of like what we might could do and how we might could do this. Um, there we go. So up here, just for anyone wondering, oh, didn't mean to do that. This right here is just the formula. I mean, it's a really basic equation for calculating this. It's a real, I mean, it's a simple algebraic equation of there's four variables. If you know three of the four, you can solve for the fourth, you know, and it works no matter which one it is. But in this scenario, what we'll basically be looking at is we can measure static pressure and see what that is. We can measure or estimate what the current CFM is at the current static pressure. And then if
Stop
we,
there. That's
okay,
where I was saying measure or estimate. So, like, we should probably
yeah,
have a field here that says whether it was measured CFM or estimated CFM,
yeah, which,
because you're going to
I,
have a higher certainty
yeah,
with measured than you will with estimated.
yeah, which actually, uh, let's go back to that. Let me
Okay.
finish this because
Okay. I'll let you go through.
I have an idea with this. So I guess just to kind of briefly explain what this does, you measure your static pressure. We can know what this number is. We can either measure or estimate our existing what the current CFM is at that pressure, and then if we can say, okay, in this scenario, actually let's change it up. Let's say uh, let's keep it simple because
800. So we're
yeah,
going
let's
to
say we're going
go
to a
from
two
a
ton.
4-ton to a 2-ton.
Yeah, say we're doing that. We can estimate, okay, we can expect the static pressure to be 0.29. If everything stays the same, and this includes duct leakage. If you start sealing things up, you're going to skew with it. If you change the return duct, you're going to skew it. But
So if
what
you
you
see that the ductwork is very leaky and it'd be a good idea to tighten it up, then you
yeah.
need to be aware that tightening it up is going to affect your is going to drive your static pressure up some. So
Yeah.
if you're right on the border and it needs a lot of duct um, sealing, then you probably need to modify and increase some of at least the most limiting factor.
Yeah, yeah. And you can use this to also kind of predict what kind of ceiling budget you can allow for yourself. And you can play with that because like there can be a scenario
Oh
where
yeah,
say we have a 4-ton system and our static pressure is high. Maybe it's not this high. Let's say instead of zero point 0.9, and this is actually a real scenario that I'm thinking of right now, where it was zero point 0.8 and it was a 4-ton system. Definitely didn't need 4 tons, uh, but they've not really had problems per se. But then you dig into it and you get to looking at the ductwork and it's like, oh, you've had rat problems that's just chewed through your flex everywhere. And so you're probably losing 30-40% of your airflow with your ductwork as it is. So where this kind of comes into play is we go, okay, well, we can't take this 4-ton, put in another 4-ton, and then seal up the ductwork because we're going to drive this right here through the roof. But
right.
what we can do is we can bump it down and we can go, okay, we're going to go from a 4-ton to a 2-ton, which then puts us down at 0.26 as it stands. And then it gives
We
us
could do a
from
lot
there
of
up to point
duct.
0.5 of duct sealing. So it
We could
gives
do a
us a
lot of
budget there.
sealing. Okay.
And you
Oh,
can,
that's interesting.
yeah,
So don't tighten it more than to half an inch.
Yeah,
Like, we'll tighten the ductwork up until we get to half an inch, and then we'll quit.
yeah. It's an option you can do because it's
Oh,
something that you got to kind of you have to kind of play with because I'm sure there's been several people they've probably run into the same scenario of you learn about all these leaking duct problems or you see it and you want to fix it and you're like super excited because you're like, oh, this is something that's like easy to do per se. It's like, oh, you see a hole, seal it, simple. But then you don't think about anything else and you don't think about what potential issues you could be causing. So and so and also that is if we actually measure and if we have this now where we can start to tangent to a potential alternative. Let's say we have one calculator for measured and one calculator for estimate. I think probably for estimating, uh, there should be a range rather than a set static pressure. I'd have to play with the numbers and I would really need to look back at all the testing I've done. And really that wouldn't be enough. I'd kind of need to get a lot of data to look and see what's the testing of a lot of people, what have they seen, and then start to kind of build some patterns of like, what does that typically look like? Because there's so many different variables and you want to kind of isolate that to go, okay, here is PSC motors, and here's a slew of data from that. Here's PSC motors with a dirty blower motor before and
right.
afters, EC motors before and after, all these types of things. So that way, if you can build up a pattern, then you can start to kind of estimating, which I say that really X13s is going to be the easiest because if you're measuring at the equipment, now you're not factoring in for duct leakage, but you can use a fan table with static pressure and you can estimate pretty accurately. Now, there's things like, oh, what about if the coil's getting dirty? What if the blower wheel's kind of dirty? Yes, that's where the estimation margin is going to come into play. But you could have something where you can begin to estimate things to be like, okay, we can expect this type of allowance if we make a change. So instead of putting in these numbers and going, oh, we can expect 0.26 because we know some of these hard numbers. We know what the static pressure is. We know what the airflow is. Rather than that, it might be, okay, punch in these numbers and we estimate 1400 CFM. And then we can go, okay, well, that could be, we could expect to see a 0.26 up to uh, 0.45, whatever, something like that.
Okay.
Because let's say this old system's a PSC motor, and let's say we're not actually moving 1400 CFM, we're actually only moving 1100 CFM or something like that, and we don't
And
know it.
Measure Quick would tell you that because it would tell you delivered capacity.
Measure Quick can, yes, with the psychrometers, it can estimate that airflow. Um, there's been other people to say has seemed to be very accurate. Um, I've not tested it enough to be able to say for sure.
So
I
you
kind
would
of,
yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing, if you have a true flow
yeah,
grid, you're clearly gonna use it because that way you can have a much higher level of confidence.
yeah, yeah. But also, there's just so many caveats here because I'm also thinking
Right.
about if you're in an area like me where you have a lot of filter grills, just because you use the true flow grid doesn't mean uh, that's
A good
also
number
the
because you're
same.
blocking off some of the filter grills.
Well, no, because it's the true flow grid only sees what flows through the grid. It
Right.
is it is blind to any duct leakage in the return because it's going around the true flow grid. And so then
Oh,
because you can get lower flows than what you think
okay.
because a lower flow at that same static pressure is like it. Let's say instead of 1400, we're actually at 1100 the same way that a PSC motor is moving only 1100 rather than the 14 that it should. In this scenario, like I kind of adjusted this. Well, if we thought we were moving 1400 and we were estimating a 0.26 static pressure after we're done, but then we finish the install and we check it and it's actually 0.42, then that means we were actually only moving 1100 CFM. And the same thing works in inverse if the true flow grid is not seeing duct leakage to where it thinks it's this. Granted, we're going in the opposite direction, so it's actually a good thing. But we are still blind to that duct leakage.
Hmm.
So that's where I think I got to spend a little bit more time kind of figuring out where should the lines be drawn exactly, because unless you can't build a process around a bunch of what ifs and if that then this and that sort of thing.
So Ben Moore says it's close, but if you're on how accurate yours are, and placement is very key in the Measure Quick app.
Yes, that is very true, Ben. And that's where I've not really tested it in a known environment and played with those to really see, because it's just it gets into there's a lot of tricky variables, and when you get into trying to predict these things and if you start trying to put a hard number to it, it gets a little squirmy, because what if your probe's a little
So
bit
this
off and
should
you
be a
don't know it?
range also, as opposed to a point.
Yeah, as a useful tool, yes, to allow for margins of error. But the tricky part is
Or
figuring out
maybe
what that margin is
you need
exactly.
to articulate, maybe depending how much of a basket case your ductwork is and how dirty the old equipment is, and whether it's got a PSC or an EC motor, and whether or not static's above 0.5. All of these things start to get squishy.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and one of the things I wanted to talk about is, it seems like if you're at 0.5 or below, then you don't need to use the 30% factor going from a PSC to an EC motor.
yes. And which
So
we should, we,
if that's the case, then probably there's a ramp in that 0.3 where you might want to go 0.05, 0.1, 0.15, 0.2, and that might be at every little increment of static. So maybe
yeah,
at 0.6 you'd use 110%, and then at 0.7 you'd use 120%, and then at 0.8 or above you'd use 130%.
yeah. And to,
And now Eric can put that into the calculation that way.
yeah, in which we should probably clarify what we mean by this. That 30%, that's something that a lot of us have found, which really I think Jeff is the one that come up with
Jeff
this on.
Howard.
Yeah, is what he come up with is that changing from a PSC motor to an EC motor or an ECM, he had noticed roughly a 30% bump in static pressure, and that bump comes from the scenario of the system. It's a 4-ton system, but this PSC motor is only moving 1,000 CFM or 1,100 CFM, and then you put in a new EC motor that's going to move that 1,000 or move that 1,400 CFM, and so you
Or
get that
try
static pressure bump because of
of it
the
ramping
difference
up
in
to try and create,
yeah,
a gallon and a half of flow in a 1-gallon jug.
yes, because I mean we can actually plot this out right here to see uh, if, let's say, I mean, like in this scenario, if you're moving 1,100 CFM at point 0.8, and the existing was a PSC motor, you put in a new motor that's moving 1,400, you're going up to 0.13 right there.
Okay.
And that is if there is a 300 CFM deficit. Granted, that deficit is going to be more extreme the higher the static pressure of the existing equipment is. But Jeff's also in an area where they're predominantly furnaces, which tends to have a lot higher static pressures than, say, air handlers. So there's also a caveat there where, depending on what type of system it is, you're going to see more extremes than others.
Right, so different parts of the country,
Yeah,
you need to know the idiosyncrasies of the equipment that's typically sold in that part of the country
yes,
that you're
yes.
in.
But at the end of the day, like, this is just really basic math. The physics of this is what it is. So if you do have that old motor that's not moving the airflow that it should, and you put in a motor that's going to move the airflow that it should by forcing it, you're going to get that bump. And so
Mm.
that 30% increase is just what Jeff had found in what he had seen out in the field over and over, which then kind of comes into the, you know, another reason why if you size into the green, you can alleviate some of these problems. And
I
really
have
at the
an
end of
anecdotal story that Ronnie told me about one of his sales from last year. The homeowner called unhappy about her energy bill. And Ronnie said, well, that's kind of strange. And he took a look at the installed pictures, and they didn't put the equipment on the riser box he specified.
oh,
And he's like, well,
choke
energy is
down.
going up because that ECM was during the heating season was throttling up. And so a lot of extra energy went to the fan.
Yeah, I
So,
could see that.
yeah. And like one of the suggestions, because it was a hybrid, was to turn off the heat pump at a high temperature, but that's not what the client wanted. That wasn't the
Hmm.
intention. The intention was to have this thing running on electricity most of the time. Um, so they ended up having to go reinstall that box.
Oh,
Yeah, so getting this stuff figured out in advance can
hmm.
really help avoid some warranty reserve claims.
Oh yeah,
You know,
that it can. It's almost like if you just do it right the first time,
it's almost like if
you
you
will.
just do it right the first time, right? And I don't think it's a salesperson's job to make sure that the installers follow the contract
Yep.
or instructions, but um, in some cases, I guess you gotta pay attention to stuff that's out that that is adjacent to your job,
Yeah, that you
and
do.
that's going to be more and more true as people become less and less competent, which seems to be a
Yeah,
trend.
yeah,
But hopefully, this will allow the salesperson who's not as experienced or knowledgeable, and probably never will be as experienced and knowledgeable as you guys who have done this stuff soup to nuts. So this will allow a salesperson who doesn't really understand this stuff to be able to offer some protection to the company and to the client.
yeah, yeah. Definitely so. Because I mean, a lot of this just kind of it kind of comes down to either a you're gonna do you're gonna go all the extra mile for everything, or you're gonna recognize patterns and then implement actions for the patterns that you've recognized and get a lot of high quality work at a fraction of the effort being put in. Because I mean, in reality, the we can put together just the most amazing pre-testing process to make sure it's you get the exact right equipment to make sure you alleviate every problem. Yep, blah blah blah. But there's only a small percentage of people that'd be willing to pay for that. So you kind of have
Right.
to make the decision. Do you want to try to help a fraction of a percent of your clients and then alienate the other 99.99%? Or do you want to help the other 99% and get it right the majority of the time and not have to take ownership of unmeasured things or educated assumptions because someone didn't want to pay money?
Yeah, and this will allow you to clearly communicate to them the unknowns. So
Yeah,
there's some stuff we don't
yeah,
know. unless we break out some diagnostics equipment, which is going to cost you some money in diagnostics fees. Um,
Yeah.
and this is how I feel about it. Like in
Yeah.
this case, it's probably well worth the diagnostics fees, or in this case, you know, you're probably in good shape without the diagnostics.
Yeah. And it helps at a minimum, if someone's not willing to do anything, it at least helps them understand where the safest assumptions can be made. If you're going to have to guess, if it's a situation where, unless you're just going to do charity work, guessing is going to happen, you can at least arm them to be able to make the best guess that they can.
Well, like load range is best guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and in talking to Austin, he thinks this whole company should switch to likely load range. And while I don't know that I fully agree with that, I agree with it in his case because they're using um, the load calc version of Auditor, not the Auditor version.
Oh, you mean EDS?
Yeah, and
Oh,
and I
yeah.
would say that the Auditor version, if people are going to use it, that's allows you the ability to be more accurate with your guessing than than the load calc version. The load calc version is um, makes a lot of assumptions that tend to end up being wrong a lot. It seems based on, I mean, they've used it thousands of times,
Yeah.
and so there's patterns that have been showing up,
Yeah.
and some of the guys have used both, and they're like, oh well, this one here is pretty good, and this one here is pretty garbage.
Yeah. And I mean, really, especially at the scale that they're at, you could probably pencil out some of the numbers and look at, okay, how much money is spent on having to redo work? And then how
Right.
much money is spent in paying someone to go do all this extra work? And it's like, okay, what?
And then the homeowner's unhappy because you've interrupted their life a bunch of times.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, you could probably go, okay, what if we just implemented straight across the board likely load range for everything, and then just accept that if likely load range is wrong, we're just going to fix it and see is that number less than or greater than the current warranty reserve that's currently
Being
happening, and
spent.
I would bet money that that would probably be less because
Oh, yeah, I
like the
would
fix
agree.
for those would be a simpler fix versus having to tear out equipment and replace it again with new equipment because it was oversized.
Right.
So, uh, I mean, you could probably math that out and make that make sense in doing it that way. And you could probably also I mean, if you were going that route, you could just accept you're going to have to redo certain things, make guarantees, and just know that, okay, 95% of the time we're going to be right, but 5% of the time we're going to have to go redo things. And that's probably going to still be less than what they're currently doing.
Yeah, well, so in the way that likely load range is delivered, or at least the way Ronnie's doing it is, um, if the homeowner let me put this back on here. If the homeowner goes past what he tells them is good risk, um, they're signing off on assuming the risk. So it's not a warranty reserve call at that point if they have complaints.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually, well, you instructed me to install this, and I educated you that it was not a good, that you're taking some risk.
Yeah.
And then it's the risk is on the homeowner, and they've explicitly taken it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
so, which I guess as just a hypothetical, just like looking at a worst case scenario, even like if someone did this, but they did it wrong, maybe they didn't make it clear that,
they
hey,
used this process, but they didn't
yeah,
shift.
like,
They
yeah,
didn't responsibly avoid responsibility for the decision.
yeah, like that's still the amount of times that that would happen, and then that would cause an adverse effect that would
Warranty
cause a
reserve.
warranty reserve that would still likely be less
At the end of
then
the year, you're still gonna have a whole lot more money in your warranty reserves using this process.
yes. Because, I mean, especially if they're offering labor warranties and stuff, because you start factoring in, like we were talking about with static pressure, you start factoring in having to go and replace blower motors under warranty, and
Or size
you,
of or replace the equipment because the
yeah,
people are like, "Yeah, it's too big and it's
yeah,
noisy," and
yeah, it's like, okay, you're replacing blower motors, dealing with the unit's noisy, dealing with its oversized, like all of
taking
those
ownership
are,
of the ductwork, which you never touched.
yeah, it's like that. That is still higher and more expensive than the worst case scenario of utilizing likely load range and taking and not responsibly avoiding responsibility. You could probably not responsibly avoid responsibility with likely load range and still come out
And
better
still come out ahead.
than,
That's what we were trying to get at.
yeah. So it's just it's funny. It's just one, and it's and on top of that, it's like you can do that. That's just looking at it from a business perspective. At the end of the day, you'll be providing better results,
Better service to your
better
clients.
service, and so there's a differentiating factor from you versus your competitor.
So did you see this, Ken? This is a
Oh,
pop-up window that,
we can't hear you. You might want to check your audio settings.
still not coming across, but so this is a pop-up window that shows up in the free quote process now. You don't have to run the report. So you can preview your likely load range. It's one of the things I think people are going to want to do. Like likely load range may show up as 22,845 BTU to 51,250 BTU. And you just might want to round to the nearest thousand because then it's possibly easier for homeowner to get their head around.
How's that?
We can hear you.
There we go. Now we can hear
Okay.
We thought you might have been on vacation.
you.
I'm on permanent vacation.
We thought you might have gone to the beach.
Nah.
So, Tanner, were you able to get into the
Let's
practice
see.
environment?
Did you send me that link?
I put it in the chat, in the private chat
Oh, okay. In StreamYard. Okay.
in StreamYard. Yeah,
I did not
sorry.
notice that. I can pull it up now.
Because it might be fun to actually see it live in the test environment. Now, I wasn't
let
able to
me.
log in for some reason.
uh, where? Oh, there it is. Right. I was trying to find the tab. Okay.
I think you have to go to the questionnaire.
Okay, so it's in the questionnaire as well.
It's in the questionnaire.
Let's check this out.
Huh.
Unless I overlooked it, I don't think so. I think when you're in the questionnaire,
Where does it show like the link to likely load range? Because right now I think it sends you to the spreadsheet, right?
oh well, it's in the measurements, but I didn't see it. I think it's just going to be in the measurements like usual.
Oh, okay.
So then let's just.
I don't see the hash. That doesn't look like. Oh, okay.
Let me.
That's so small I can't see it. Is it working?
Let's see. I don't think this is quite working because it's showing 24,000 on the very front, but it's not populating the 42. It's showing 36, but it's not showing 42 at the end.
Okay. Okay, so it's not showing, it's going every ton as opposed to giving you the beginning and the end number.
Yeah, and I just went to 2 ton to 3.5 with this.
Okay. And then when we show the static pressure limitation, it's going to be on the cooling side so that people are encouraged to size the heat pumps to cooling. We really encourage people to size heat pumps to cooling, particularly if they're going to use 1 or 2 stage. But what we found is during the meat of the season, cooling load provides all the heating capacity you need, and then the amount of staged in. So basically, your backup heat stages in on top of the heat pump, and that way you keep your resistance expense very low.
Yeah.
In the old days, people would actually lock out the heat pump, and then your backup heat is running all of your load, and that'll spin the meter pretty fast. Whereas if the heat pump's still running and the resistance only provides the difference, it's really not carrying that much of the weight.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Which
more playing with this.
Yeah. Which another thing, I wonder with this, instead of giving BTUs, should we give a ton? Like maybe heat, we stay with BTUs per hour, and then cooling go in tons of cooling, so that way it's more friendly for.
That seems like it might make sense if we just use whole tons. There could be a slash mark for a half ton, but then
Yeah.
for the text, you just do 1 ton, 2 ton, 3 ton, 4 ton, and 5 ton.
Yeah, because one thing with this, if you're showing this to a homeowner, and this is what I
Right,
end up
they have to
doing
do
is
the
have to.
conversion, whereas it's easier if it
Yeah.
just shows it.
Yeah. Which actually, let me caveat that. If we're going to do that, let's make a toggle. Because this is me being selfish, because I do use this when I do designs for other contractors, and
Okay.
when I do a likely load range. So I do like to be able to punch in exactly the BTUs for my for my use. So let's keep that, but they just have a toggle.
Okay, I'll
Well,
put
actually,
that.
hold on. Actually, hold on a second. Let me just look at something, see what this looks like.
That might make it easier if they're doing
Does
dual
it?
fuel.
Okay, yeah,
If you have
no, that ain't gonna.
BTUs for heat.
Yeah. Yeah, well, having tons for cooling, but then BTUs for heating.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a heat pump, you're sizing your heat pump based off the cooling capacity, anyways. So it's like it don't matter at that point.
Right.
But and then for heating, if it's going to be a furnace, then you're not you're going to
It helps
say it
distinguish
as.
what you're whether you're talking about a furnace or a heat pump if you
Yeah.
do it that way. So I think that's a good idea, and I made note of it. Slack to Eric.
Yeah. So
and having it be a toggle so you could go back and forth.
yeah,
If there is a reason you'd prefer it to be BTU, that's fine.
yeah, because I think that'll make it easier for the homeowner to see. Because like I don't know why I've not really thought of this before. Because every time I use this, if I show this and they see 24,000, I say 24,000. That means 2 tons of cooling because it's 12,000 BTUs for
Right.
1 ton of cooling. So it's like instead of explaining that,
It takes
why
that
not?
explanation out.
Yeah, it's like just simplify it. Like just say the thing that you're
Some
trying to
people,
convey.
yeah, some people aren't good at math, and so you might lose them with that explanation.
Yeah, then it's another bit of information that's really unnecessary.
That can cause confusion, and
Yeah,
a confused mind says no.
exactly. And so I do think for cooling, having that duct overlay with that, so that way you can look and go, okay, hey, based on your house, our likely load range is a 2 ton, from a 2 ton to a 4 ton,
Right.
but your ductwork's constraining you to two
Three
and a
and a
half
half,
ton.
two
Yeah,
and a
two and a
half.
half, three, 2.5, three, whatever. Or maybe it's in the middle. It's like we're somewhere in the 2.5 to 3 ton constraint. You know.
Right, and if the ductwork shows up constrained all the way down in the green, you might be starting to lean on them a little bit for spending some money on their ductwork. But if the ductwork is pretty far up in the yellow,
Yeah.
then they could probably get by with the duct they got if they're willing to size to the green.
Yeah. And then
Um,
maybe even in the future we can start to then incorporate like EUI with that, because that can give some
Further
more.
make them confident in their
Yeah.
sizing choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That and it also gives a good indication for the severity of duct leakage, because that was one of the scenarios that I'd mentioned, before, with the people that had the 4 ton and the static pressure was zero 0.8, and then what that scenario would look like in replacing that equipment. Um, their equipment was very leaky, and the way that we come to that is one of their pain points is they thought their power bill was a lot higher than usual. And I had just built out an EUI calculator on my website that I use for my like I just pull it
Right.
up, and I'm like, hey, if you can pull together a year's
Your
worth of
energy
power.
bill, let's take a look.
Yeah, so I punched it in. It's like, oh wow, like you're actually
You
using
do
a
have a
lot
high
of energy.
EUI. You're losing a lot of heat up there,
Yeah.
probably.
So then went from that to, hey, let's go take a look at some things, start crawling around. And it's like, oh, like you've got Swiss cheese for ductwork. And so
Yeah.
it's another thing that it points you in the direction of things of,
Right.
if your static pressure isn't that bad, and their equipment seems like really oversized, so you expected worse. What if their EUI is high? Oh, well, I should probably start looking for some duct leakage, because I say that for me, I'm dealing with a lot of crawl spaces and attics, so duct leakage
Ducks
seems to have,
outside.
yeah, it has a lot of negative effects. So if you're in a similar climate to me, that's my process and train of thought for those things. You can sniff those things out with that little bit of information,
Right.
and it also qualifies the client. If how big of an issue is it? If you're not willing, you don't want to pull up a year's worth of power bill.
Energy bills,
Yeah, you
not
probably don't
my
care.
money, not my problem.
Exactly. But if they do and they're willing to, okay, well, they want to fix this problem.
Yeah, this bothers. There is some pain here.
Yeah.
And is the pain justified? EUI will tell you, well, you're right. You are spending a lot per square foot.
Yep.
That's a great idea. It's a
Yeah.
great idea.
And in my scenario, what we had ended up doing was, it was a bad compressor. They were like, we really don't want to put any more money into this unit. We want to just replace it. And they're like, okay. We went through all this, and they were in a spot where they're like, we can really only afford right now to get this, first option, this single stage package unit, like for like replacement. We went through the free quote process, checked their EUI, found the leaky ductwork, and then that went from, let's just replace it with the cheapest one, to like, actually, let's just fix the unit as it is. Let us save up some money, because we want to get the better equipment, and we want to fix the ductwork while we're at it.
We
and
may
wanna
as well
crawl space.
get a split system if we're going to redo ductwork
Yep.
and get better equipment.
That's exactly it. So
Yeah. Seems like homeowners understand they want to get away from the yard furnace pretty well. Like that
yeah,
seems like a common refrain.
yeah,
Particularly if the ductwork is pretty dismal. And you start telling them, well, we can replace the ductwork so that you're stuck with yard furnaces, or we can get you a split system and design duct for that.
hmm
And, when I watch Sam and his wife sort of noodle through that, they're like, well, I don't want to replace the ductwork twice. So let's do the whole thing all at once.
Yep.
And in the case you're talking about here, if we're going to do it all at once, we don't have the money now, then let's limp along with this piece of crap
Yeah.
that we got till we have enough money that we can do it all at once.
Yep. That's exactly it. And it's
it's
one
a
of
much bigger sale and much more satisfying because the
Yes.
homeowners are like so much happier in their homes afterwards that they just think of you as
Yes.
someone who really took care of them.
Yes. And this one is a scenario of someone that they planned on living in that house for, if not forever, an extremely long time.
Right.
And so
Right. That question is very important.
Yes. Because being able to, like, it's one thing that sure you can like fix their unit when it breaks and you can be quick and replace the unit with the same thing. But if they just have like a very baseline level of results and and just overall
If
satisfaction
the
from
house
what
is
you've
the
done,
same after
and
putting a brand new unit, it's
yeah,
kind of a disappointment. You
yeah,
spent all that money and nothing got better.
yeah.
I mean, we
But that's
still have
like
heating and cooling, but it still sucks.
yeah, but that's like what everyone's used to, and that's what they're used to. So when you're able to offer these alternative options. For one, it's more expensive, but they're happy to spend it because they're getting so much more out of it. And I'm sure after, when we fast forward in a few years and we end up replacing their unit, going to a split system, encapsulating their crawl space, and making a lot of these improvements, they're going to have a drop in their power bill. They're going to have a lot more comfortable house, and the package unit that's right outside their bedroom window that's extremely loud is now
Right.
going to be whisper quiet and they're never going to hear it. So they're going to
Yeah.
have a totally different house than what they would. And this is a house they're going to be in for a very long time.
Yeah.
So they're going to get a big increase. They're going to get a big difference. And that's going to stand out a lot more than just being the guy that, hey, he showed up on time when the unit broke. Like, it's just a different experience that, really has a lot better, just
Better outcome
customer
for
satisfaction.
everybody.
Yeah, it's better
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna continue to circle around this airflow, static
Mhm.
pressure. This part of the sales process, I think, is going to be really important in educating the homeowner to their decisions and
Mhm.
helping them take responsibility for those decisions. I mean, it empowers them to take ownership. And you might hear the homeowner say, "Well, you're the expert," but there's a response to that that's like, "Yeah, I'm an expert at my house, but I'm not an expert at your house. You're the one that lives here. And I don't know anything about this house, and there's more I could know if you wanted to hire me to find out, but most people don't want to spend the money on that, and we have a process that helps you mitigate the risk of the things that I don't know." So, if at the end of this free quote process, because I'm here to do the free quote process today, at the end, we will ask you if you'd like to move to the next level, which is a comfort consult, where we'll be looking at your energy bills and doing an energy model that includes infiltration testing and room to room and all of these other things, we'll know a whole lot more about the deficiencies of your house. But that's not a decision for today. That's a decision to have done next week. And we'll ask you if you want to do that at the end of today. You know, and the more that we work through these narratives on these Monday meetings, the firmer they're seated and the easier they are when you're, I mean, really when you're in a homeowner's kitchen, it's like you're on stage. So good to practice the script here.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's more than an hour. We can chat live a little bit if you guys want to talk about stuff you've been doing. Ken, do you have any interesting stories?
A couple of conversations with my grandson, but that's all.
How
Nothing
is
relevant.
he coming along?
He still insists on performing load calculations.
Okay, without a blower door?
Without a blower door.
What software?
Cool Calc.
Okay. Would showing him the likely load range help him be less comfortable with his Cool Calc?
He hasn't been burned yet.
Okay, so he needs it to be expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, which really all he needs to do is install an Ecobee, look at the run times, and then compare that to what Cool Calc says it should be for heating, and then
he's got an Ecobee in his house now, so I'll have him do that.
Okay,
because of course he's only recently bought the house, so
yeah,
hasn't accumulated enough data yet.
Does he have the tools for Measure Quick? Because that could also make him kind of uncomfortable. If he's been doing a lot of like for like.
Yeah. No, he's usually
downsizing even when he does the the load calc. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's somewhat protected from that bad experience because he's downsizing pretty consistently just by doing load calc. So he's doing aggressive load calcs.
Moderate load calcs. I wouldn't say aggressive. It's enough.
You look at what he's doing and think he's still putting in stuff that's too big.
I don't have any evidence of that yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just suspicion.
If he's following Cool Calc's heating loads, like on sizing, because like for me, when I use Cool Calc, I ignored the heating load like it didn't even exist because it was utterly useless. If he's letting that influence the sizing, yeah, that's going to be very difficult to not oversize because I found it to be atrocious.
Yeah, I don't think that Cool Calc is being relied upon that much for heating. It's largely been for cooling capacity.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
Because I found it to not be. It's not too bad for cooling. It's not as aggressive as the energy gauge with Quick Model, but it's not too bad. I'd feel fine with that.
Yeah.
It's just the infiltration's the wild card at that point.
Yep.
Right, and I guess if he runs into problems with people, they at least have the right size equipment. He can go out and say, "Well, I need to get my grandfather out here."
Yep.
With his blower door.
Yeah.
Let's find out what the
problems are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess I don't see a problem with that process. I mean, it's not great, but it's pretty good.
I missed this comment. I have not yet.
Tanner, have you got to install any Goodman sized side discharge units?
Yeah, we're a little bit late to this one. He sent this 4 minutes ago, but I have not yet, Ben. It is
Hey Ben, thank you for coming. It looks like you are a user of Measure Quick, and I mean that's cool.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, okay, you know him.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have the last. Let's see. I'm trying to think.
This is
The
your friend in
la
Florida?
Yes, the
Okay.
last one that I did. Well, the last two. One of them was the one that I was just talking about. Who they decided to just fix the unit, and then they're gonna get this Goodman side discharge whenever they do replace their system because they wanted that one. They just didn't have the money yet. The other time, it was a scenario where it was a rental, and they were like, "We just want single stage," and so that ended up just having to be a fast box swap. But I'm gonna get one eventually. 'Cause
So you've been pretty busy.
yes,
What where's it coming from and what's been happening?
um, existing customers is
Okay.
yeah, it's been some. There's been a few lingering things which I'm just now starting to go through my membership for doing maintenances and stuff. So I
Okay.
anticipate some conversations to be had through that, and something may turn up with that. But yeah, it's just been mostly that, and with been through some referrals. Ben actually recommended me to join a BNI, which I did. So I've joined a
And how's
BNI
that
chapter.
going?
I've got 0 referrals so far, but
You've
I
been
think it's
going to
good.
the meetings,
Yes,
getting to know
yes,
people?
yes. It's been good for networking. Um, I mean, I've done a few things here and there for some of the members. Um, I think it'll turn into some stuff.
Okay. And it's good
Um,
it's a good muscle for you to exercise,
yeah,
socializing with other business people.
yeah. It's a good muscle just to exercise just the socializing part.
Yeah. You and I, introverts.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh, I don't know when yet, but I am gonna make a video for the Angie's List stuff.
really?
Spoiler alert, don't do
Not
it.
good.
Yeah, don't do it. They're retarded. Oh, I didn't say the R word. Don't ban us, YouTube. But yeah,
I think we're past the point where YouTube checks. I think they check the first 15 minutes of language and such, and we're not monetized anyway. So
yeah.
you know,
Okay, well we'll go back with it. Yes, Angie's List is retarded. They're all retarded. They suck. Yeah, I've
and
which
the other one, the chopsticks or whatever it's called,
Thumbtack. Yeah, I've used
thumbtack.
Thumbtack. It's a little slow, which I've got my limit set low just because it's more of like there's like a minimum limit that you have to have in order to have your profile active. Uh,
Okay.
and once it gets to the point to where if I need more leads, that is a lever I can turn on to like jump that up. Um, yeah, from BNI. Yeah, that's what I think as well. One thing I've been within the meeting, I've been trying to set up doing what they call one-to-ones in BNI, where you kind of meet with some of the other members one-on-one and have lunch or whatever. And so I've been uh, meeting with some of those just to kind of like,
You
I do
giving
things.
them you giving them the full self-driving experience?
Uh, no, I didn't.
Oh, you got to do that and share your
Yeah,
referral code because
yeah.
when you give people the full self-driving experience, it blows their minds.
Oh, there was one I did do. I went to a guy's house. I'll probably end up be doing something with him. I just don't know what yet. But I had to take my truck to service center. It had just a few nitpicky warranty things that I wanted to get fixed before summer got here when I won't have time. But
Yeah, the tonneau cover thing was a pain in the butt. That's fixed.
yeah, that was fixed. That was apparently it was a pretty simple one to just
You would
yeah.
recalibrate it a bunch of times. It was something.
Yeah, they had to do something. I think they like reset the track because it seemed like it was kind of getting a little bit skewed or something. But
Okay.
it's now working. But when I took it up there, I rented. Or they gave me a Model 3 as a loaner, a Model 3 Performance.
Oh,
So
yes. How did you like it?
um, I mean, it was good. It wasn't the new refreshed Model 3. It was the old.
Oh,
I
oh,
think
oh,
it was
okay.
probably like a
Okay.
2022, 2021. So
Okay.
like compared to the truck, I was like, not a fan. And I
No.
also forgot how much lower those cars sat because I'm used to my
Yeah.
Model Y. But the fun part is I took it to when I went dropped the truck off like at 8 in the morning, and then I drove straight back down in the Model 3. and went to this guy's house. We did a 1-to-1, and I did some testing and was kind of starting a plan for what to do at his house. And while we were there, I was like, "Have you ever even drove a Tesla?" And he was like, "I've never even seen inside one." I was like, "Let's go for a ride. You're driving." And he was like,
They
"Oh,
gave you FSD car?
yes, it was." But his road wasn't I mean, he was out in the boonies, like even more
Okay,
so
and
than
this is
I
a
am.
version 3 car, so it didn't know how to.
Yeah, so we didn't really have any good opportunities for that, but I let him drive it and stomp it a few times, so it was pretty fun. But yeah, Jacob, I'm
I'm
I'm very
interested in the Amana S series,
yes,
essentially Goodman SD. Hope you like the Goodman SDs. Offering them to customers are not crazy about the new technology. And then
yeah,
Ben Moore comes in and says, Jacob, we use the Daikin Fit. It's the same thing, and they are super nice. Daikin Fit are amazing, Jacob. Everybody's loving them.
yeah,
So, and the price is unbelievable.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
The
don't be
big
concerned about it.
yeah, what
Don't hold back when you're talking to them. Don't be like counteract that.
well, I would say with if they're saying I'm not crazy about like they're saying I don't want new technology. That's really where the reversing comes into play, where you ask like, okay, when you say you're not crazy about this, like, what do you mean exactly? What are you not crazy about?
That's a
And dig in,
Sandler. That's perfect.
yeah, and dig into that and find out like what is it that they care about? It's like, okay, if they've got some old unit that the condenser's right outside their bedroom window, I bet they probably get a little annoyed at middle of the night when it wakes them up when it kicks on. They probably
And they will not be hearing that, Daikin.
yeah, and so there's things that if you like, you really comes down to what they really want, and that just kind of comes to you got to be able to ask questions really well, figure out what it is that they're actually wanting, and have childlike curiosity because you want to just see what's going to suit them best, not get them to buy what you want, and then when you s- sign up for an account, utilize the smiley faces, create those tables, and you'll be surprised what people pick.
Yeah, listen to Ultimate Sandler too. You can get it
Yeah,
on Amazon.
and just to highlight the discussion here, yes, for those which for pretty much any uh, residential communicating systems, it's just thermostat wire.
The additional cost is well worth the safety factor.
Yeah, yeah. It's like until you got to get into commercial, if you're talking like Fujitsu VRF with their uh, pink stranded wire that only that particular wire work. That's that's really only much of a problem in commercial settings, just because you've got a lot more going on.
Then it's a
Uh,
lot more expensive.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So the
yeah. So for all the other, at least I don't know of any communicating systems that require shielded cable. Uh, I've only seen it like regular thermostat wire
oh
works
oh
with them.
okay
So, but I could be wrong.
okay. Well,
Which do you know of any kin that residential equipment that requires shielded cable?
Haven't run into any. Nope.
I didn't think so.
well, I'm glad to hear you're busy. I'm sorry to hear that Thumbtack still hasn't like proven to be
Yeah,
something that you wanna start increasing your spend on.
yeah. I think the problem is it's the mechanism, not Thumbtack or which Angie Leads is they're just a shitty company in general.
Right.
So that's why they suck. But the mechanism of getting like of a homeowner going, I'm going to go to a site and I'm going to look up people. I think that just facilitates certain types of homeowners, and they are not necessarily the best. You're going to
Right.
get more of those price shoppers, the ones that, they're going to be the ones to say, "Hey, can you just sell me the equipment and maybe I do the install, or what if I provide the equipment?" You're going to get more of that. rather than someone that's just like, hey, I called you here because I know nothing about this and I want you to fix something for me. Can you do this? Those
Right.
types of people tend to just look up individual companies and just call them directly. So I think it's more of just the nature of how the lead is being sourced. Um, but it's not that it's bad, because I mean, if you can, when you do make a sale, if you do have a pretty good average ticket, well, I mean, you could easily justify, okay, hey, you sold a Daikin Fit for 13, 14 grand. Is that worth $500 lead? I would say yes. And for $500, you can get a lot of leads through some of these. So I think that's where it kind of comes to figuring out a good qualification process
Right.
to
Where
not
the
waste as
balance
much
is.
time. Yeah.
Right. Well, hopefully, ultimately, we get this sorted out, and there will be a consumer side of it, and you can drop them in, and they can qualify themselves based on how much information they're willing to provide.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that if they go through the free quote process online, there's a whole lot less work for you to do when you get there,
Yes.
and they're showing that they got some pain.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And you could also, I'm sure there's a way to optimize it. That's what eventually I will
play
figure,
further
like,
with it.
yeah, I will, like, because really what it's going to take is I need a little bit more time to be able to sit, like, to lean into it, get some more of these leads, put attention to it, and go, okay, for install leads, here's what I need to do. Like, I need, because there's going to be certain things that I'm going to have to figure out of, you know, to optimize these types of leads to qualify, and either qualify them and be like, okay, this is worth chasing, or this is not worth time, and pass them on, and then figure
Right.
out what are the things, like what kind of upfront contracts are more necessary for these leads versus others, and some of those little nuance things I think is what it's going to take, or 3 times. But yeah, they're not that uh, not too difficult. I mean, it's not VRF. You don't have to you know worry about anything crazy like that.
Yeah, but you do have to tell people to read RTFM,
Oh yeah.
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 because that does
Yeah.
help
Which
it go smoother.
here's a anybody that hasn't tried this or doesn't use it. If you have either ChatGPT or Grok or Claude or whatever, if you use the app, if you will download the PDF the install manual, drop it into whichever LLM that you're using, and then ask the LLM whatever question that you want to find in that document, and you can speed up the getting information from that manual
Oh,
so much
that's
faster.
brilliant.
Yes.
It's
I
having an assistant read the manual for you.
Exactly. And if you work on if you deal with a certain type of unit consistently, you create that one chat, you upload it that one time, and you can go back to that same chat over and over and keep asking it questions on that particular piece of equipment. So I'll have a chat named, let's say for instance, Daikin Fit, blah blah blah. And when I have a Daikin Fit question, I go to that chat. Hey, what's dip switch this and that, what setting should it be, or whatever, and it's pretty damn good. That's eventually that's just what it's going to be. You're going to go out to the site and you're just going to talk into your phone and you're going to say what you're seeing or maybe what you're measuring, and
That's
use your
gonna talk
camera and you
right back
scan
to
it,
you and tell you
and
how to do it.
yeah, you're going to have some Australian dude telling you what to do.
That's awesome.
Crikey.
Crikeys. You monkey, you're putting in too big a unit.
Yeah, there's going to be you click unhinged version of Grok, and it's just
Yeah.
going to start calling you a pussy, be like a 3
You
ton.
chicken shit. That should have been a 2 ton. Oh, that's awesome. All right. Shall we go to the after party?
I think so.
Do you
Works
want
for
to?
me.
You're welcome to text Ben the link.
Sure. Yeah, Ben, if you want to hop on, I can send you. Text me if you want to hop in. You might be busy. I know it's a little bit late for you.
Jacob, thanks for coming. Appreciate your questions. Hope you'll come back in 2 weeks.
Well, all right.